I think all your microphones are on mute already, so thank you very much for that. My name is Steve Phillips. I am the Director International at MPW. I'm very pleased that this morning, this is our first actually in a series of the Getting Into webinars that we'll be having over the next few weeks, every Wednesday actually at 10 a.m. So your diary should be fixed and set for the next few weeks. Very exciting session this morning of getting into Oxford and Cambridge to kick us off with some great kind of aspirational targets for you and for your children and for your students. Very pleased that Matt Carmody is with us today, the author of this publication. So for the next few Wednesdays, we do have a few more. So we've got engineering, getting into engineering next Wednesday, and then getting into art and design on the 16th of March. We'll be talking a bit about our new partnership with University of the Arts London as well, because we are a new delivery centre for them with the foundation in art and design. So very exciting news that we'll share with you. You have to wait 2 weeks until you can hear that news. And then we have getting into psychology on the 23rd of March. And then the last one is a very popular publication as well, getting into medicine on the 30th of March. And each time it will be the authors of the publication that will be leading presentation and hopefully some time for a Q&A as well. MPW and the Getting Into series, for those of you that don't know, it has been quite a long relationship actually that we've had for over 20 years. Now we've been working with the publications, and MPW staff and teachers are the authors of more than 12 or 13 publications actually in different areas. And we use them a lot in our own schools for our pupils to learn more about the prospects after life at MPW, where do they go? But they're also used throughout the whole of the UK as well, in other sixth form colleges. I've seen them in libraries. You can purchase them. I'm not doing a sales pitch, but you can. And I was actually very pleased a couple of years ago on an overseas trip to see them in a British Council office as well. So really pleasing to see them being used, not only great for MPW, but also great for the people that read them as well, because they really are very useful, insightful, and give lots of interesting tips about how to get into your progression route or your subject of choice. So I won't talk for too long because Matt is raring to go. Matt is head of faculty at MPW London, and he's head of all things Oxbridge at MPW. So very pleased that he's here with us today. Your microphones are on mute. I can see that already. If you do have questions, pop them into the chat box as we go along, and I will get to those after Matt's taken us through his presentation. So Matt, thank you so much for joining us today, and over to you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. I presume I can be heard, Steve. You can hear me, and that's right. Good, lovely. Okay, need to check that. Splendid. Okay, well, hello to everybody, and as Steve says, please do ask whatever questions do come to mind, and we will try to address them all towards the end of the presentation. I will begin. We've got a number of slides here, about 10, 12 slides, which I will talk through to give you an overview of the Oxbridge world, what they require from students, and of course what MPW does in particular to facilitate applications and entry to Oxbridge. So let's begin with the environment. You've got a nice little picture there of King's College, Cambridge. We use the word Oxbridge as a portmanteau term to refer to both Oxford and Cambridge universities, these being the oldest two universities in the country, founded in the 13th and 14th centuries, and they have for well, a lot of that time been considered to be in the very top ranking universities, and until very recently have always occupied the top two positions. You'll be aware that they now belong to a group of universities known as the Russell Group, of about 21, 22 universities, all of which consider themselves to be top flight universities. But it is still the case that Oxford and Cambridge are right at the top because of the particular academics they attract to teach the students and the particular demands they make of the students. Now, what's different about them, apart from their sheer age, is that unlike almost every other university in the country, there are some exceptions, they have a collegiate structure. And so that when students apply to the university, they apply to a college, and they will be a member of that college for their time there. And that college is where they will live, it is where they will work, it is where they will socialize, and it will be really the center of their world. That doesn't mean that they can't go to other colleges and fraternize with people there, and indeed they may well do if they have lessons with people from other colleges. But they, although they do belong to either Oxford or Cambridge, their allegiance will primarily be to a particular college. They will say that they are at a certain college in Oxford or a certain college in Cambridge. The business of applying to a college is one that I know that students do have a lot of concern over, and you may well have some questions about that later. But by way of a preliminary, as it says there, it's important to note that both Oxford and Cambridge have a great number of students who make what we call an open application, which is where they say, I have no particular college in mind, either because I'm not familiar with the system or because I am happily indifferent to them. So please assign me a college and I will go there. And that is, as I say, that is something that I think about a third of students, I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head, do. It's certainly an increasingly popular option because students quite rightly say, what I would like to do is to go to Oxford and Cambridge, and I'm not that concerned really what college I go to. I mean, after all, they, for the most part, they will offer pretty much the same range of features. The main things being there, of course, accommodation, food, and the academic environment. Now, that academic environment, again, is something that is a distinguishing feature of Oxbridge. And depending on whether we're talking about Oxford or Cambridge, we call them tutorials or supervisions, but they are the same thing. That is to say that they are small sessions where an academic, a professor, a lecturer meets with the under their care, and that may be a group of 5 or 6. It may just be you, a single student. If you are, I remember when I was there as a third-year philosophy student, there was no getting out of it. I had one-on-one meetings every week with people, as I was at that point the only student in the college doing philosophy. So you have an environment in which, unlike many universities where the primary means of educating you will be going to lectures and seminars, you will have this extraordinarily intimate and focused academic environment where in a small group you will meet with a professor and they will ask you to talk about your work. You may even have to read out an essay if it's that kind of subject, and people will take it in turns to read essays out and then happily rip each other to shreds in a nice, polite way, of course, with tea and biscuits. But nonetheless, I certainly know from my experience doing philosophy that it can be an unnerving experience at first to have your essay dissected by others. If you're doing sciences, of course, then there will be time spent in the laboratory as well. But you will still have that tutorial supervision system, a whiteboard there. You would still be expected to show your working, as they say, to go up to solve problems. It is very much an environment in which you are an active student. You are not receiving information and processing it. You have to show that you are able to think on your feet and think out loud with those professors. So I said that it's all about discussion and that kind of interaction. And that idea of the active student extends into the sort of greater academic picture, if you like. Outside of that tutorial time, there are other things that one will need to do. There are lectures, there are seminars, there are laboratory sessions for those who are doing courses that will require it. But there is also an awful lot of what one might dangerously call free time. Now, it's not really free time because what you are supposed to do is to go to places like the Bodleian Library or the Cambridge University Library or one of the very many other libraries that you will find in Oxford and Cambridge with a reading list and manage your reading and manage your writing and manage your work in general. They are extraordinarily keen to take on students who have got that maturity of approach, who can manage their affairs, so to speak, and get the considerable amount of work done without too much pushing and prodding, and also without too much direction. I don't mean that the students turn up and they are abandoned, but what they want are students who are self-directed, who can seek things out and find things for themselves, as opposed to students that just want to be spoon-fed. They specialize in what we might call traditional courses, single honours courses, the sorts of courses that go, with your simple traditional names, your English literature, history, physics, psychology, philosophy, and so on. That means that there isn't a modular structure that you get with ever so many other universities, where both within a course you could pick different modules and you could combine modules from different courses, as you might do in an American university with a comprehensive liberal arts program. You sign up to something. I mean, take history for an example. If you sign up to do history, then you do history. You do 3 years of history, and you get a history degree. The other thing to mention about courses such as medicine and law, ones where one immediately thinks, well, there's a sort of practical element there, that people who will be studying medicine will go off to become doctors, people who study law will go off to become barristers, is that they're looking for people who want to focus on the academic side, as with all subjects, on the academic side. And so it's a regular thing I say to students, simply because the admissions tutors tell me to say it to students, that the kind of applicant that they want, who is thinking of applying for medicine, is somebody who will stay on to do postgraduate research. And similarly, the sort of person that they would like to study law is the sort of person interested in jurisprudential questions, who might want to go on to research the law as opposed to merely practice. I mean, they know full well, of course, that the majority of students do go on to work in chambers or work in hospitals or surgeries, but nonetheless, and this is a point we stress over and over again when it comes to interview time, what they're looking for, regardless of the course, is that academic interest. They have short terms, so along with giving you free time during the day, they give you, again, in that somewhat misleading sense, free time with very long holidays. The terms are about 8 weeks. In those 8 weeks, you have to do an awful lot of work. I mean, I can remember at one point I was having to write 3 essays every 2 weeks, which was pretty tiring. And that might contrast with writing 1 essay every half term at other universities, even Russell Group universities. In those holidays, they would expect you to do lots more work. So even though your contact time, as we might call it, is relatively short, you are expected for the years you are there to be working jolly hard and consistently to get through everything. And it is for that reason that they are very, very strict about students having any kind of part-time job or any kind of job at all, really, even during the holidays at Oxford and Cambridge, because they really want you to focus on your studies. It is a competitive business, you'll be unsurprised to learn, getting into Oxford and Cambridge. I mean, very roughly, the number to have in mind is 6 applicants for every 1 place. I mean, Oxford, as you can see there, in 2019 was getting close to 7. Cambridge was a little under 6. Those numbers won't go down. They vary around that figure, but roughly speaking, it is it's between 1 in 6, 1 in 7 people get in relative to the number of applications made. Those applicants, again, unsurprisingly, are exceptionally well qualified. On average, they have, to use the English GCSE system, they have A stars or 9s at the top grades, pretty much across the board. At A level, you are going to be made an offer which is going to be, again, towards the top end. Typically, for humanities subjects, it will be A star AA. For a science subject, when we would include maths there, A star A. And a lot of people get those grades. I mean, I think the first figure there is the eye-catching one, that for the 2019 cycle, and I know because I've just been checking the figures for the new cycle, it is still the case that over 95% of successful applicants at Cambridge, and for that matter Oxford, get A star AA. And as you can see there, at least half get 3 A stars. And there you have the figures for Oxford, and as I say, I know that for Oxford that has gone up over the previous year to towards 95% of students getting A star AA or better. You'll notice that I should just point out, as those grades on the screen, that the offer is for 3 A levels, and something that we're often asked is whether it would improve an application to study a 4th A level. And Oxford and Cambridge are very clear, no, it will not improve your application. What a 4th A level can do, and this is a matter of logic as opposed to successful application, is give you more chances of getting the top grades because you have 4 subjects to play with rather than 3. But 4 A levels is an extraordinarily demanding requirement to put on oneself, and it will simply not give you an edge to have 4 A stars over somebody with 3 A stars at any stage or any part of this process. And if you're wondering why that is, the reason is that 93% of the students in this country who will be applying to university, the sixth form students, will be part of the state system as opposed to the independent system, which MPW is a part of. And in that state system, people study 3 A levels, and consequently Oxford and Cambridge could not ask for more, because then that would obviously show a considerable unfair bias in favour of the independent sector. So it really is the case that 3 A levels are all you need to do. That's what gets people in every single year, both in the MPW and other independent schools and in the state sector. So if you do want to do a 4th A level, if somebody is interested in 4th A level, then that is okay, but they need a different reason for doing it. Now, we will talk a little bit more on another slide again about other things we can do, but negotiating the list of courses is, of course, something that we can provide a lot of help with, because very many members of staff have studied at Oxford and Cambridge, and as I said, most of the courses there you get are what we call traditional courses, such as history, English, and so on and so forth. There are subtle differences between the courses. These do change over time, admittedly, but I am told by those colleagues of mine who studied history that Cambridge focuses more upon 16th century English history in year one, and Oxford focuses more on 15th century history in year one, if that is of a particular interest. I know that Cambridge economics has a more mathematical focus than the economics component of courses in Oxford. So there are subtle differences between the courses, and this is something that we would talk to students about who are thinking of making an application. There are also some special courses at Oxford and Cambridge, and PPE is possibly the most famous course, as it seems to be, until recently a prerequisite for being a member of the cabinet to have a degree in PPE. What that tells you about PPE, you can make up your own minds. But it is a very popular course, PPE, philosophy, politics, and economics. That is only offered by Oxford. And on the Cambridge side, they have special courses such as human, social, and political sciences, which is a relatively new course for Cambridge, and an extraordinarily popular one that replaced their social anthropology course that was there when I was there. Which is and it's a wonderful course. Looks at all sorts of things from genetics to sociology to economics and so on. And then the definitely minority sport that is Anglo-Saxon, Norse, and Celtic. And I must, I've yet to have a student who has applied for Anglo-Saxon, Norse, and Celtic, and it is a fond hope of mine that I will one day, as my grandfather was a translator of Anglo-Saxon, Norse, and Celtic. Cambridge still cling on to this degree, and it gets a few people in every year. It is only offered at Cambridge. I think probably these days it is Cambridge may be the only place in the country that does it. That will also be true, I should add, of many modern languages. Modern language departments across the country have been closing down over the last 10, 15 years. But both Oxford and Cambridge maintain a very rich range of modern language provision, and for that matter, ancient languages. Oxford has a fantastic ancient languages degree, in which one can study, I think, pretty much every language about which we know something. So let's get on to the business of what people are looking for. I've spoken about grades, and it is obviously important to have grades, but grades are neither necessary nor sufficient for getting a place at Oxford. I mean, first of all, when I say they're not necessary, although we do talk about the averages of 8 or 9 eight or 9 top grades at GCSE or 3 A stars, those are averages, and people can get in even if they don't have a brilliant GCSE profile, for example. I mean, lots of people do sort of come online, so to speak, when they're doing their A levels, and so we regularly have students at MPW who say, I don't really think my GCSE profile or the equivalent of what I had at 16 is good. But it turns out it's going to be perfectly fine because their A levels are, they're getting fantastic results in their A levels, and Oxford and Cambridge are more than willing to look at anybody they think has got academic potential. So not having those GCSE grades isn't an immediate reason to think that you won't be eligible. So that's on the necessity side. On the sufficiency side, that's more important. We do get a lot of students who think, well, I'm going to get A star, and so I'm, I might as well buy my, my bike now so that I can start riding around Cambridge. And you have to say to them, well, no. I mean, there are a number of hoops to jump through, and there are a number of desiderata, and simply having the grades isn't good enough. The first reason is because A levels are A levels, and they are not undergraduate degrees. A levels have a job to do. A levels are different in many ways from an undergraduate degree, and it is by no means obvious that somebody who does very well at an A level will continue on that trajectory. It may be that the A level is their limit. It may be that the A level is also taught in a way that meets their needs, if you like, and they will not flourish at a higher level. What Oxford and Cambridge are looking for, and you know, the phrase that I use over and over again with students is a profound curiosity in the subject. You know, as I've stressed at the start, what you will be doing at Oxford and Cambridge is talking to other intelligent people. You will be forced to talk to other intelligent people. So you need to be thinking about your subject. You need to be curious about your subject. You need to be able to think deeply about your subject. And think in novel ways. You know, those essays they want you to write should be ones in which you are creatively exploring a new point of view. That's not something you really do at an A level. You know, when you're studying history at A level, for example, you are quite rightly learning an awful lot about, I don't know, the 30 Years' War or something like that. But for your Oxford undergraduate essay, you may contest the received wisdom. You may say that you've read these books and you disagree with these historians. That's exactly what they're looking for. And as a historian, for example, you should be interested in other subjects. You know, as a matter of necessity, we have to divide our subjects, our libraries, our textbooks into boxes with different headings: history, philosophy, economics, science, physics, chemistry, and so on. But what they are looking for are people, both in the sciences and in the humanities, who have got cross-curricular interests. You know, a philosopher should be interested in psychology. A historian should be interested in the literature of the time. And it is always a favourite question of admissions tutors to ask historians what literature they're reading, or to ask the philosopher what they think are the most important recent discoveries in physics in the last 20 years, because they want to check that somebody is dipping into all of the areas that we can dip into, and thereby to make connections. I mean, if the students of history, this is a very fashionable thing to talk about recently with books such as Thomas Piketty's Capital published. Students of history will need to know a lot about economics. You don't need to be Marx to think that economics matters to history, but you do need to be aware that it's going to be relevant. You do need to think, for example, of are there interesting connections between what movements in psychology and movements in literature? And the kind of students who relish that, who enjoy jumping around and learning new things, are the sorts of students that are going to flourish at Oxbridge. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the general character of the applicant, that sort of intellectually hungry individual, the need to work through the A levels to get the good grades. The next thing that they will need to do, almost certainly, is to sit an application assessment, so admissions assessment or entry test. Cambridge courses require students to sit some kind of test, regardless of what other qualifications they're doing. So whether you're doing your A levels, or it might be some UK alternative like the pre-U, or whether you're coming from overseas, they will want to subject everybody to an additional test to measure what we might call sort of raw intellectual potential. So these are not tests where students have to study a brand new syllabus, and learn a whole load of new things for some kind of special exam. There may be, in a couple of cases, I mean, physics is a good example, I think, at Oxford, where there are a couple of extra topics that one has to learn, but by and large, you have to learn nothing new. But you do have to sit the tests to see, if you've got that extra something that A levels won't assess. And at MPW, what we do is we help students get through these assessments by getting them to look at the past papers and to work through them and to help them with any difficulties they've got. Because you can't prepare for them, the best thing to do, as we find, is to get students to have a go at them and then to work through them, and then to have kind of sort of Q&A sessions afterwards to identify the problems they have, so that they can do better in the real thing. For the admissions assessment, there is an interview. If we're putting these things into a sort of a calendar for you, which might be helpful, the application date for a student in the upper sixth, in the year 13, the final year of their ordinary studies, is the same every year, and it is October the 15th. And the student's calendar therefore sees them submitting their application with all the relevant things by October the 15th. Having that interview, that admissions assessment, typically around the 1st of November, then all of that will determine whether the student is called for interview. So the admissions tutors will look at the personal statement that the student writes, they will look at the predicted grades, they will look at the reference that the college writes for the student, they will look at the results of the admission assessment, and then they will decide whether to call the student for interview. And interviews normally take place in early December, with then the offers being made in January. So it all happens quite quickly. Our students found out about just over a month ago whether they had got places or not. And the interview, there's a lot of myths written about the interview, that it's a sort of terrible process, and people come out, in tears and what have you, and it's designed to grill students and make them feel uncomfortable. It's really not. It's a nice-ish environment, nice warm chairs, and again might be tea and biscuits. And what they're looking for are students who can talk to them, because once again, if they're going to be spending 3 years with you, you better be somebody who is a good conversationalist. So it is the opportunity for a student to shine, and the interviewers will, not just do a kind of 20 questions thing. It's not a pub quiz, entertaining as they may be. What they will do, certainly in the case of a subject like mine, which is philosophy, is to ask open-ended questions to get students to think on their feet, and just to see how they think. I know that when I do mock interviews, for example, I will raise a topic and we'll get the student to think about it, and I will deliberately try to push the student off. And what I'm looking for is to see how the student can argue back. We give students sort of, oh, there we go. We give students at least one full mock interview. Once they've heard in November whether they are going to be invited for interview, then we give students sort of, as I say, one full mock interview with at least 2 members of staff or relevant experts, to put them through their paces with feedback. We also, of course, give sort of, if you like, warm-up advice, sort of general advice on how to conduct yourself in an interview. So I'm just going to put sort of three questions there, the kind of thing that people might ask. These are real questions from real interviews. There's a philosophy question there about identity. If all the cells in your body have changed since you were 8, are you the same person? And if so, why? There is a question given to students of PPE or economics there, which is, do bankers deserve the pay they receive? Should governments intervene to limit how much people can earn? And then you've got a question from geography there. If you could save either the rainforests or the coral reefs, which would you choose? So it's those sorts of questions by and large. Students of maths and students of physics will probably be given an engineering as well, specific problems to solve on a whiteboard. But again, they may be, certainly in the engineering ones, open-ended to a degree. So finally, how do we help here? Well, the first thing we do is tell students how and what to read, get them into the reading program. Right at this moment, indeed, I'm talking to students. We've got a number of students already who are interested in making applications in October of this year, and I've had meetings with a number of them to try to find out what they're interested in, and they are getting on with some reading. And I cannot stress the importance of this thing about reading, because we live in a time where far fewer students are comfortable with the written word, the book, than was certainly the case when I was applying, simply because there were no such things as iPads and smartphones and so on and so forth, and the ability to read, by which I mean to immerse oneself deeply and slowly in something, is a skill that they really want to see in their applicants. And if you're not used to that, and even the brightest students cannot be used to that these days, then it takes a while to get into it. It takes a while for such a student to feel comfortable sitting down with a 500-page book on some period of history in which they're interested in, but they need to do it. And so what we do is we try to get students started early on the reading, try to help them think about things to read, talk to them about the things they're reading. We provide masterclasses to help students get through those admissions assessments. All tutors will have available extension material for those students that want it, who really want to push themselves. I mean, I know, for example, with my philosophy students, there's the homeworks always have a set of extension questions to test those who are thinking of pursuing the subject to a higher level. And we of course have our wonderful directors of studies team, who would be the people who write the references, and because they build up a very particular relationship with the student, and they get to know them, they are able to craft really quite wonderful and exceptional references that show the admissions tutors just how academically able and gifted and worthy these students are. And then turning to the personal statement, that shop window that the student has to present themselves in admittedly the short space of 750 words. The directors of studies are experts at helping students to write those personal statements, to help them bring out the best of themselves, to show that profound curiosity, that intellectual depth. The directors of studies and I, we sit and we work with students, and often a student may go through 5, 6, 7, 8 drafts of a personal statement until it's just absolutely right for the admissions tutor. And finally, the other thing that tutors do, as a matter of course, is to help students identify things they might not have considered to broaden their academic profile. So obviously in London we have, especially now that COVID restrictions are gradually easing, the opportunity to go to ever so many university lectures or society lectures, such as the Royal Society. There are festivals of ideas, essay competitions, groups and clubs like math circles, summer schools. Oxford and Cambridge are starting up their summer school programs again now that we don't have to be in the online world, and all tutors will and I don't think this is not just for Oxford and Cambridge students obviously, but all tutors will know about the relevant things in their subject areas and direct students towards them. So students have via these sorts of things, via their directors of studies, via their tutors, an enormous amount of enormous number of things that they can use to help them develop their interest, their academic interest, which will hopefully lead them to excellent personal statements, excellent results, and places beyond. Now, I put at the end there some sample admissions questions, but I think possibly given the time, it might be rather than talk you through particular admissions questions, which I sort of happily email to you as a kind of diversion. Perhaps I ought to ask Steve whether it's now time to consider some questions.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Matt. You can give your voice a small rest, but it held out the presentation, so that was great. Thank you very much. Yeah, everyone, you feel free to put questions into the chat box. I do have some anyway that have come up from members of our team over time, from either agents and parents, and I'm sure that these are not new questions to you. But I will just say before I ask those that if you go back, everyone, and have a look in the chat box, you can see our email address, which is international@mpw.ac.uk. So if you would like a publication, a free copy of the book today, please do drop us a note on that email address with your physical address, contacts, wherever in the world you are. We'll post a copy out to you. We do have a lot in stock. And if you're clever, and of course you are clever because you work in international education, we're all very intelligent. You can ask for the future publications as well now for the next 4 or 5 weeks. So if you want the Getting Into Engineering book and others, yeah, please just do ask us and we'll send those on to you. So Matt, yeah, that was great. Actually, there's always very interesting listening to you, always very insightful and practical suggestions. A couple of questions have come up over time, but one specifically from your presentation today. You mentioned about the different colleges that are at Oxford and Cambridge, and you can have an open application. But if you specify a college, would that make your application stronger, do you think, or it really just doesn't make any difference?
I don't think it makes that much of a difference. I have heard it said that if you apply to a particular college, that shows that you've done your homework a little bit more, that you've been through, you've drawn up some sort of spreadsheet and you've decided, yes, this is the college for me. And I can see that, but I've also been told by admission students and a number of people I was talking to when writing the new version of the Oxford and Cambridge book, people from the state sector, because they wanted me to write a little bit more about the contrast between the state and the independent sector, that said that their students routinely put in an open application because the whole Oxbridge world is less familiar to them. But I mean, what I do say to the students is I think, and this would concur with you, is whilst there is absolutely nothing wrong with making an open application, the colleges do have their differences, their idiosyncrasies, their attractions, and so on. And given you've got time, why not have a look through and see if there is a college that does speak to you? And I think that the majority of our students do. I think I would, and by that I mean 90% of students at MPW do make specific college choices, and they do so for the right reasons. That they've looked at the college and they like, for example, that it's quite small. They would like to be in a small academic environment, or they like, for example, take in the case of one student I've got this year, she's applied to Newnham. It's a women only college, and she wanted that kind of academic environment. And then there are colleges which have got a reputation for their music, like King's College and the choir, and people want to get involved with that. So I think it is always worth spending some time looking through the colleges and going in. Indeed, now that there will be real open days again, having a wander around and looking at them. And hopefully, and I think this is the case with most students, they will be pleasantly surprised that there are a small number, maybe even one college that speaks to them, and that's the college they want to apply to, and that does make for a happy fit.
Great, yeah, thank you. I suspected that would be the case, and with people like you and the support you offer, you would always advise the right way as well, wouldn't you? Which is good to hear. So yeah,
so I was just going to add just one thing on, because I this may be the question that you're about to follow up with, but the question that is, I think, perhaps most often asked, and this is more by parents than students, is which is the easiest college to get into for my subject? And every year I steel myself for these conversations because, as I'm sure you will realise, there is no easy college to get into for a certain subject. There's no college that has over its door, "We'll take anybody," because then the numbers would go through the roof. The universities have fantastically detailed statistical reports every year, and if you like this sort of thing, you can pore over the figures and you can see year by year that the number of people and the number of places varies. So you might find it in 1 year, let's say, I don't know, King's College, Cambridge, admitted 40% of its applicants for history. And you might think, well, that's really good because the average is about 16%. But if you trace the numbers back, then in previous years it may be that they admitted 10% or 30%, and it's not like the horse racing. You can't study the form over time and work out exactly the college to go to. There are, the caveat I will make. I mean, there are a couple of exceptions. I mean, Mansfield College, Oxford is always the standout one, which has, I think, 93%, or was it something like 92% state school pupils, and so obviously, that is a college where one would not advise in the first instance people from the independent sector to apply. But other than that, when it comes to choosing a college, as I said, it is worth, and you're right, it is worth, not immediately jumping towards the open application. The things that one should look for are the presence of people who are going to teach your course, and for the vast majority of courses, there's going to be somebody in your college teaching it. It is only, if you're studying ancient Persian, then it might not be that every college has an ancient Persian specialist there. But then, of course, that would simply be a matter of you walking sometimes literally next door to the next college to meet the professor of ancient Persian. To consider whether they will accommodate you for all 3 years. And again, I think now these days the answer is yes. And so beyond that, the choice of college is going to be focusing on the small things. And do you want to be in a big, small place? Does it look nice? Is it near the centre? Some people like that. Does it have good sporting facilities, which are important to a lot of people? And latterly, does it have perhaps experts in the particular things that I'm interested in? And I say that very much as a sort of latterly thing, because although as a student there you will benefit from meeting a great range of academics, another misconception that admittedly a small number of students have, but one that's worth getting out, is that if you are particularly interested in black holes, say, and there happens to be the professor of black holes at Cambridge, you will not be spending all 3 years going for long walks with the professor of black holes. They will be supervising postgraduate students, and you may get to go to a lecture or two. So don't apply to a college thinking that you will be sharing toast and marmalade with Stephen Hawking or similar. That's not going to happen. Choose your college, as we say, on the sort of bread and butter issues, the food, drink, the accommodation, and so on. Okay. Sorry, you had another question though, Steve. Sorry.
No. Well, yes, there's a couple that have come in. So, I mean, related slightly, but a question from Sharon about would you recommend students to apply for 2 to 3 different and related subjects for Cambridge in different colleges, all through one application, or really just specify on one and that's it?
Okay, that's a relatively easy one to answer. On the UCAS form, first of all, you and I know this isn't where the question was going, but it's worth specifying. You can only apply for one of Oxford and Cambridge, first of all. And then once you've chosen the one of Oxford and Cambridge, you have to apply to one college, or you make that open application. So there will be a single entry out of your 5 in the UCAS form for a particular course / college, particular college, and then a particular course. So what you can't do is in effect say, look, I'd love to go to Cambridge. I'd like to be considered for these courses at these colleges. You've got to choose one university, Oxford, Cambridge, one college, one course. Okay. That's and in general, we advise students to apply for the same or very, very similar courses when completing that UCAS application. So if you want to read engineering at Cambridge, then we'd expect to see engineering, and the universities would expect to see engineering on the UCAS form as well. So I hope that answers that question.
Yes, it does. Yes, that was quite a straightforward one. Thank you. A couple of other questions have come in. Not sure if you know the answer to this one, but do Oxford and Cambridge, do they provide special tours for agents? So agents that are representing students in their home countries, can they be shown round the universities or the colleges?
The answer is I am not sure. They do have two very large international offices, both Oxford and Cambridge, because they do take in a huge number of international students each year, especially at the postgraduate level. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did have such resources, to help people become better informed about Oxford and Cambridge. But that's, off the top of my head, I don't know, but certainly something we could look into.
And they do have open days, don't they? When you can go in.
Oh, they do. Yeah, they have open days. Absolutely. I mean, they have big open days, and I would like to think. I mean, I'm thinking here of somebody I spoke to from an independent school up in Hull whilst doing a bit of research for the book. And again, somebody from an area of the world, that is to say, a state school in the north of England, which didn't have a history of getting students to apply to Oxford and Cambridge. And he said that, because I was asking, do you think there are any colleges where you say don't apply because you're from a state school? And he said, no. He said every time we've been to Oxford and Cambridge, it's been incredibly welcoming. And what he did was, to phone up colleges and say, can we come down in a bus and have a look around? Rather than just wait for the open day. And they said, sure. So I think that they're quite good, obviously with a bit of advance notice and so on and so forth. They're quite good at organising events to better inform people about Oxford and Cambridge alongside the open days.
Good. Yes, thank you.
The music question there, which colleges are best for music? There are, and I'd have to refer to the Trotman guide for the details here. I mean, I think there are 22 colleges in both Oxford, 22 colleges in Oxford, 22 colleges in Cambridge that offer a variety of choral and music scholarships, and so those are the ones that would be, primarily your music colleges. I mean, all colleges will have music facilities, and there's a huge number of orchestras and chamber groups and things. So even if you're at a college which doesn't have, like King's College, the sort of fantastic chapel and choir. It's a university-wide institution, something like the Cambridge Choir, for example, and so you can join regardless of what college you're in. So I think it's worth. Again, I could provide a bit more detail. Worth having a look at the Trotman guide for those particular details. But they were great, and this goes for all activities. Because so many of them are university-wide, as opposed to just having college teams. Regardless of what college you're at, you can get involved in all sorts of things, quite easily there. If a student fails the assessments, can they reapply? And the short answer is yes. I mean, anybody who's made an application that has been unsuccessful can reapply the following year. It's a fresh application. So what you can't do is carry over everything, but just resit the admissions assessment. And so they're happy to treat somebody as a fresh student the second time round. They are, I think, reasonably clear that a second time round applicant, somebody who was not successful the first time round, is very welcome so long as they've got something new to show. So they've used that extra year to gain further qualifications or further relevant academic experience. They are pretty clear that if you fail for a second time, it's probably worth looking elsewhere. I don't know of anybody who's been successful a third time around. And those admissions assessments, as I say, they are on the particular day. It's a sort of once a year thing, and then so you go around to the next year if you've not been successful. The next question says, MPW is offering Oxford preparation courses for A-level students. How many will they study every week? Now, do you mean by, if you mean by that, as a matter of ordinary preparation during the term? It's going to depend on the right. I mean, it'll depend upon the student and the course. I mean, I know, for example, with something like maths, where students may have Oxford will have a maths admissions test, and then they may be asked to do the sixth term examination papers. Then they may have a couple of extra hours each week with somebody like Nick Sovich to prepare them for the maths. If somebody is sitting the TSA, the thinking skills assessment, the kind of logic-y thing that people do for PPE, they may have an hour a week with somebody having done some papers. I mean, the way we do things with these admissions assessments is, in the first instance, we say to the student, look, download the papers. Some of them they will have given the answer scheme as well, not all of them. And there are relatively few papers, I should stress, because they want to keep things hidden to some degree. They don't want to reveal all their secrets. Have a go at the papers and then come to us and we'll talk through them, because you can't prepare too much for these tests. The whole point of these tests is to be unpreparable for, to try to test that student's raw ability. So yeah, there will be a small number of hours per week, but if the student wants more and that's considered appropriate, then we can do it. I mean, I know for philosophy, for example, and I've got a student who may be interested in applying next year for philosophy, and so we regularly chat about philosophy, and so that might be a half hour here, 10 minutes there. So over the course of they're in year 12 at the moment, that adds up to quite a lot. So it will depend, but we each student would be treated individually depending on the course. We would sit down and work that out. For Oxbridge International applications, are GCSEs mandatory? No. Oxford and Cambridge will consider qualifications from all over the world. They have a website or page on their website where they go through the qualifications from every country you can think of, and they say that 3 A's at A level would be equivalent to this, and so on. In the Trotman Guide, we used to go through every single one, but the book became just enormous, and we realised that we didn't know, for example, everything about the Vietnamese system, and it was becoming quite difficult to research. So we thought we'll just leave it to Oxford and Cambridge. But of course, they're the experts, and they're very, very happy to see any set of qualifications, any type of qualifications, whatever, of an academic nature, because they say they want the best students. So they will they're happy to look at them, and they say, please do not be put off if you went to the Netherlands, for example, for your pre-A-level education, and you've got the Dutch leaving school certificate. They will understand it. They will know what to do with it, and it will not put you at a disadvantage. The next question we've got is there any passing mark of the Oxbridge assessment entrance test? The answer is no, for a good reason. What they do with these tests is they make them the sorts of tests that, firstly, you're going to struggle to complete in the time anyway. They just throw more questions at you than you could possibly do. And then what they do is they mark them, and that generates roughly, I mean, I'd like to say roughly a normal distribution curve, but it tends not to be. It tends to be more of a curve that goes like that, to be honest. And again, you can see these things on their websites. And they will not say that there is a certain mark that constitutes a pass or a fail. They're not graded in any way. What they will do is that they will look towards the top end, and what constitutes the top end will depend upon how good the students were that year, how many places there are, and so on. So it's not the kind of test where you think, gosh, if I get 300 points or if I get 86%, I'm in the clear. It's more like a race. What's going to matter most is, did you come first? Did you come second? Did you come third? And so on. They are, having said that, I mean, they to try to give some guidance, they say, if you fall in the bottom 25% on an admissions test, then you're extremely unlikely to get called for interview. If you fall above that, then you may well do. And the reason I mention that is because although the admissions tests are important, they are not the only thing. An offer will be made on the basis of predicted grades, admission assessment, personal statement, reference, interview performance. Those things will all act together, as opposed to it being just a sort of a series of sequential hoops that one has to pass through or jump over, depending on how you develop the metaphor.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you. So I think
any more questions?
That's it. Yes, it's just gone past 11. So we started at 10:02. We'll finish at 11:02. So we've done our full hour. Thank you so much. Yes, there you are. Thank you so much. Thanks, Matt. That's really great to have you with us today. And
no, pleasure.
Thank you for continuing to author the guides, because it's just great. And I hope we'll get lots of emails asking for copies that we'll send out to people from all the different countries they came to today.
Well, that's great. Thank you. And if there are any more questions, then obviously I can put together a frequently asked questions email.
Yeah.
And respond to everybody collectively.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, reach out for us
comes
direct.
To mind.
Yeah.
Great.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. And I shall wave goodbye to you all from across the world.
Yeah. Thanks everyone. Thanks Matt. Thanks for joining. And we'll get to any other questions later and email us through those. Have a good rest of the day, everyone. Good evening.
Thank you.
All the best for now. Bye bye.
Bye.